Hey gang, it's Jesse Green, your friend and colleague, and you're listening to the Savvy Netters podcast, the show where we help practice owners build a practice they love as well as a life they love. Now, we call that a lifestyle practice, and a lifestyle practice means you're making the financial return that you want to make, as well as enjoying your day-to-day work life, which means you're doing the work that you love in the amount that you want to do it. So if you're a clinical focused dentist and you want to do more clinical work, that's great. But equally, at the other end of the spectrum, if you're someone who wants to run the business and get off the tools, that's just as great. It's about knowing yourself and what you're trying to create. Now, no matter whether you're looking to grow a clinical-based practice or to get off the tools yourself, at some point you're going to need to hire some people to support you, because being able to run a business means you've got to learn to be able to work with and through other people. And in this episode, I want to talk about bringing on a new clinician very successfully. Now, even if you don't want to get off the tools yourself, chances are you're going to get so busy at some point that you can't handle the workload. So we still need to be able to bring clinicians into the practice successfully, no matter what kind of lifestyle practice you want to build for yourself. Now, of course, building a great team is really important in any business. And ultimately, we're looking to create a team of A players, a group of people who know what the performance requirements are in their role and they consistently achieve those. And equally, they fit the culture of the practice. And what that means is they buy into the vision of the practice, they share your values, and their day-to-day behaviors reflect the values and the vision of the practice. Now, recruiting is a bit of a minefield for lots of practice owners. And what happens oftentimes is if they don't do it well, they end up with a clinician that doesn't fit the practice. They just don't quite gel. They're a square peg in a round hole. Or they get a great person and they get off to a slow start and they never really launch. They kind of fail to launch. They never become as good as they could have had we had better structures in place. And the third problem that occurs is that the patients don't like them or don't relate to them. Now, when all of these things happen, there's a couple of problems that come downstream of that. The first one is this busyness that you're experiencing, that you're trying to alleviate for yourself, is you remain super busy, but they remain very quiet. That's really not what we want. The second problem is they never hit their stride, they never hit their straps, which really means that there's a chair being occupied and it's not being utilized. And even if you've got patients coming through, it's not a productive use of the chair. And all of this amounts to huge amounts of frustration for you, your team, your practice in general, your patients, and of course the clinician themselves. So getting this right really does matter. We've worked with hundreds and hundreds of practices over the years, probably more than 1,000. And one of the things we've discovered is there's kind of three really important things to do well if you want to successfully bring a clinician to the practice. The first one is to do the groundwork. And what I mean by that is to make sure you're prepared and ready to bring someone in. Rather than trying to make it up as they get there, you want to have all your ducks in a row before you even start the process. The second thing you want to be able to do really well is to be able to attract and hire great talent. Bringing the best and brightest into your practice, bringing the people who fit. Because what we know is good people have options and opportunities aplenty. And so we need to make sure that we are able to attract them into our practice. And the third big thing that determines success is being able to get these new team members up to speed quickly. And that comes back to onboarding and training. So let's dive into these for a minute. Let's begin with doing the groundwork. And so what do I mean by the groundwork? Well, before you start recruiting, have you got an idea of who you want to recruit? Do you have an ideal applicant avatar? And so you've got to be really clear about who it is you want to bring into the practice. What are the skills you want them to have? What are the personal qualities you want them to exhibit? And then, of course, things like, when do I want the position to commence? How many patients do I need to support the clinician in the role? Do I need to increase my patient flow before I can bring them in? How many days do I want them in? Which days? What's the appointment book look like? And so on and so forth. And then beyond that, you need to start thinking about, have I got enough support staff? Do I need to hire another DA? Do I need to actually bring a DA in first and train them up so they can be productive by the time the new clinician comes in? And then what about wages? What about the expected earnings of the clinician? What are they going to bill? What are you going to pay them? What's the differential on that? Is that viable for you to be able to do? Do I need new equipment? Do I need new materials? What's that look like? Do I need some extra hand pieces? Have I got a chair ready? And then, of course, what's my strategy for handing over patients to them if I'm going to be offloading some of my patients to them? How am I going to do that? So, and equally, if you're working with a dental hygienist or a therapist, if that's the clinician you bring in, making sure you have a really good workflow mapped out so that your interactions with the patient in that environment, in the hygiene or therapy environment, is choreographed and executed really well consistently every single time. So That's what I mean by doing the groundwork. Now, the second part really is about how do we attract and hire the right people. So you've got to remember a few things that recruitment is marketing. And so your ad, therefore, is essentially marketing copy or sales copy, as we'd say. So we want to place this ad in a place where people are looking, whether that's in Seek or the Dental Association, magazines and publications, or whether it's in Facebook groups, whatever it happens to be, you want to place your ad in a location where it's going to get seen. And so making sure you've got a well-crafted ad that speaks to the hopes and aspirations of your ideal applicant, as well as addressing any concerns or fears that they might have, and placing an ad that does all of that in front of as many people as possible is going to improve the chances of your ideal applicant seeing it. Now, of course, once you place this ad, you're going to get some applications coming through, and you're going to need a way of sorting through or vetting those applications. You could do it through an initial phone interview. If they're coming from remote, you could maybe do it via Zoom interview as well. And I think that works really well. Of course, when you do get these applications coming in, it is very important to do some background research. And I'd love to do a bit of cyber stalking to make sure I know as much as possible about the individuals who I'm about to meet. I want to go and check their social media profiles. I want to check their work history. I want to see what's on, like if they're coming from another practice, what's their bio say on their website. I want to know a bit about when they graduated. I want to know a little bit about what they're proud of and what they want to achieve moving forward. The cover letter that they submit will also share those things with you. So if you've got a relatively new or recent graduate, they might tell you some of the things that they won at university, and that would tell you that they're conscientious and probably keen to continue their learning journey at your practice. So again, maybe in this instance, mentoring is going to be important to them. So how do we incorporate that? And of course, what we want to be able to do is to be able to understand them as we go through. So that means we want to understand what's important to them. Like I said, we want to understand where their skills are at. And again, maybe there's no right and wrong with this. Maybe there is, depending on what your needs are. But, do they have the skills that you require them to have to fulfill the role to the level you need them to fulfill it to? And what's their attitude like? Maybe asking some scenario questions when you get to the interview, like, how'd you handle this? Or tell me about a time of that. And just continue to go deeper and try and get to understand them as much as possible. And again, make sure you do your due diligence. Please do check their registration. I know that sounds weird, but stranger things have happened, right? Make sure that they have their registration with the relevant regulatory body, whether you're in Australia, it's APRA, or in New Zealand, it's whatever registration board there is there. Same in the UK, the States, and everywhere else as well. And then, of course, what we want to be able to do then is we want to be able to offer them the job in a very magnetic way. So I want to talk to you a bit about this magnetic job offer. Now, I wrote this magnetic job offer for a client that we had in regional Victoria at the time. And this particular client, loveliest guy in the world, he was having trouble attracting a new dentist to his practice. And these lovely dentists would apply, and for whatever reason, they didn't quite pass muster. And this dentist, as nice a guy as he is, was always finding fault with something to do with these applicants. And just because they got good marks at university, so it doesn't mean they're a good dentist. And I say, yeah, okay, that's probably a fair point, but maybe it means that they were conscientious. Maybe it means that they studied hard. So we put together this magnetic job offer for him. And what I did is I frameworked it out for him. And then what happened when he interviewed this next applicant, young lady who came through his doors, she was able to see the potential in the role, and he was able to see the potential in her. And they worked together for about 5 or 6 years before she eventually moved back to the metro areas. But they had a great working relationship together. She got some wonderful mentoring and guidance, and he got a really productive associate and someone who he's still very close to today in terms of being a friend and colleague. So the framework really involves welcoming people back. It's about pre-framing the fact that there's some more questions to be asked after the initial interview. And so what we would then do is we explore what's important to them. And so one of the things that, as I said, I like to do is to check out social media. And this particular applicant in Victoria, we noticed that on her social media, all of her photos, I mean, all of them were with her family. And so we reasoned that for her to move away from where she is now to a regional Victorian town was going to require some level of social dislocation. So we just took a guess and a bet, and it turned out to be an accurate one, that she would want to be getting back to see her family and her friends as regularly as possible. So we were aware of that. The second thing that we noticed is in her cover letter, she listed off a series of awards that she'd won as a student. And so we figured out, again, we didn't know what kind of dentist she was, but we figured out she was obviously conscientious. She was probably keen to continue to grow as a dentist and to learn and develop as best she could. And so what we're able to do in that situation who were able to then recap those wants and needs and say, look, it seems to me that if you were going to come and work here, that you'd need a role where you could get back and see your family and friends at regular intervals. Is that a fair assumption? And she said, yes. And all we did then was we'd say, great, I think we can do that. And it was a soft little pitch. And then we'd go on to the other one where we'd say, and I noticed on your cover letter here, you said you won these awards. Fantastic. Well done. Go you. I imagine you're a pretty conscientious student at uni. And she said, yeah, I was. I worked really hard and I'm really proud of those achievements. And they were the result of some diligent work. And so my client would say, look, again, well done. So I'm guessing then that continuing to grow and develop as a dentist is going to be important to you. And she said, absolutely it is. And he goes, great. Okay. I'm really comfortable and confident we can help you in that part of the journey as well. And then what would happen is he would summarize the conversation thus far and he'd say something like, look, it seems to me that if we were going to work together, the role would need to be one that allows you to get back to Metro, Melbourne in this case, to see your family and friends, while at the same time giving you the opportunity to be able to grow and develop. Now, if we could create that kind of role, would that work for you? And she said, yes. And then what happened was after that, he outlined his criteria about how many days a week it would look like and the logistics around that. And then ultimately he'd summarize again and he'd say again, so you're looking for a role that gives you the flexibility to get back to Melbourne, see family and friends, while at the same time giving you professional development opportunities to become the best clinician you can be. And what we're looking for is someone who can work 4 days a week, who's happy to be part of the team and is committed to doing the best kind of dentistry. Now, assuming we're able to agree on money, is this a role you could see yourself in? And so this was the pitch. And what we were really doing here is we're splitting out a yes from the remuneration. What we wanted her to do is to see herself in this role. And we wanted her to be able to say yes to the role before we got to the remuneration. Now, the remuneration package was a competitive one. It was a fair one. It was all fine. But we didn't want to kind of muddy those two things. We wanted her to buy into the role first and foremost so that she could then say yes. And once that yes came, the remuneration and contracts were discussed and negotiated. And as I said, she stayed at the practice for a long time. So again, if you're going to hire good people, you're going to need to understand that they have options. In today's landscape, these young dentists, they have plenty of options. They can go here, there, and everywhere. So we need to make sure that we are pitching them effectively and well. And so we use the magnetic job offer framework for that. As I said, it was born out of necessity, and it's now something we teach all of our Practice Max clients to do, and we have some frameworks and teaching around that. So once we've hired and attracted the right people, of course, we want to make sure that we can bring them in. Once they've said yes and the contract signed, what happens then? Well, of course, there's probably still a bit of admin to do. There's probably admin around uniforms. There's probably admin about office keys or practice keys. Maybe there's still some financial admin around tax declarations if they're an employee or getting contracts finalized. But once that's done, then really you're into the onboarding proper. And I would encourage you to have an onboarding checklist. In the Navy, where I was a young dentist, we had an onboarding checklist. It was like a task book. You have to go through and tick off the things as you go. So we'd have an onboarding checklist for them. Make sure that you have a conversation with them about the culture of the practice. Make sure that you talk about what that training is going to look like if they are a dentist that requires or wants mentoring and training. That could involve case selection. It could include skills development, various workflows in the practice, obviously what infection control protocols you have in place. Then, of course, verbal skills and language skills that are important in your practice. I would encourage buddying them up, and I'd make sure you have discussed a strategy for how you're going to hand over patients to them, because if you're going to hand them over to the new clinician, you need them to be able to receive those patients and keep those patients as well. Now, of course, in addition to this, you want to have regular feedback and review. Now, here's the key. If you get this right, this becomes a major force multiplier for you in your practice, because now you get to delegate work that doesn't fit your desire anymore. You've set yourself a floor. Anything that falls below that floor, you either delegate, eliminate, or automate, right? And so just stop doing it, really. And the second thing that occurs is we've built ourselves a blueprint for recruiting new clinicians and bringing them on successfully. What that allows you to do is to feel confident that as you need new clinicians, you can roll out that same process again and again. Now, here's the key for you. If you can successfully bring new clinicians into your practice, that's going to give you immense leverage. Now, as I said, whether you want to have a clinically focused role for yourself or a business development role for yourself, it doesn't matter. You still need to bring clinicians in successfully. And that becomes a major competitive advantage. Some of the clients that we've worked with over the last 10 years have literally 10x'd their revenue. And they weren't starting off a low base. They have 10x'd their revenue. They started at 7 figures, they're now at 8 figures. And one of the key strategies that we used to help them 10x is to be able to bring new clinicians into the practice successfully and at will. So I hope you find that helpful and look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Savvy Dentist podcast. Bye for now. Hey everyone, it's Jesse here. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the podcast. If you're looking for some more tools, some more insights, some more inspiration to help you create a practice that you love, as well as a life that you love, well, head across to savvydentist.com and check out all the goodies that we have there waiting for you right now.